All right, good evening, everybody. It is 5:30. This is Thursday, April the 3rd. It's our pre-agenda meeting for the month of April. And with that, we are called to order. We have all our board members present this evening, and we'll begin with an invocation. Bow your heads. Father God, we thank you for this beautiful weather. We thank you for the chance to be together this evening. We ask that you guide us and lead us in setting the agenda for next week's regular meeting. And we thank you for the blessing it is to serve and lead Spencer. Amen. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, board. Tonight we will set the agenda for next week's meeting, but we also have a couple of items ahead of that, reviewing that agenda. And the first is to receive some public feedback on the adaptive reuse of 401 11th Street for recreational purposes, and I'll invite Mr. Morris forward.
Thank you, Mayor. I know that during our strategic planning session a couple of weeks back, we had an opportunity to visit the property at 401 11th Street. And in the interim of that, we've been evaluating the possibilities of an adaptive reuse project for it that might be suitable for a Parks and Recreation Trust Fund grant. One of the elements of applying for a Parks and Recreation Trust Fund grant is to have public feedback. And so we are asking that the board at least provide the opportunity for public feedback. I have prepared a very brief slide presentation just to sort of summarize the possibilities for the project. I don't see anyone that's signed up to have comment, but we will meet that criteria. Later in the agenda, we will be asking the board on Tuesday to adopt a resolution that authorizes the staff to make an application for the Parks and Recreation Trust Fund grant. So we're a little out of sequence, but we're operating in a very compacted timeline.
Joe,
so,
if I could jump in,
please,
just for the purposes of part of the public involvement, does have several elements that include a variety of things that we're working on or have worked on. A survey component is one of them, and we, of course, did that a few years back. They want to see that within 10 years. We also are anticipating that our Talk of the Town event for April, which would be on the 15th, I believe, can actually be held at this location and be around this topic. And so that's what we'll be working on. And then there's also some elements of group presentations, and Joe's been working on that as well, and has had some opportunities for good feedback from several groups.
Of course, we also got a presentation during our strategic planning session, in which we had one member of the public that was with us in that, so we have an opportunity to see some of that, give some feedback.
So the remarkable thing about this is we've been talking about it since 2012. The My Woods plan, Steve was able to go back into the antique computer storage and find the presentation that was presented in January of 2012. And it specifically calls out the development of a center related to the Stanback Educational Forest. And so it's been on our radar for a very long time, but the ownership of the property is a very recent development for us, which has expedited things. So I'll just kind of jump in and maybe mention a couple other things that are important as we proceed. So opportunity for public feedback for the Stanback Educational Forest. Turn it off and on.
What I'm learning from this is Steve is also our IT specialist.
Well, when I was in planning school, we had carousel slides. Remember that?
Yeah.
Remember those?
I know
Overhead
those.
projectors with transparency.
Yeah.
Sounds like third
That
grade.
was technology.
So anyhow, and I apologize for the smallness of the font here, but what we have been working on is the idea of the development of a center, a recreation center, relative to the Standback Forest, which is located very close to the red spot between the two green blobs. And those are the two large land areas that we own relative for the Standback Educational Forest. The green land area to the bottom of the image is the original forest that we have had in town ownership for more than a decade, and then to the north is the 44 acres that we received that was deeded to us just a couple of years ago, and then sort of the red dot there in the middle is the location of 401 11th Street. And in my review of historic documents associated with this project, that was referred to as the 11th Street Trailhead. And so that's kind of where we are. For the purposes of this presentation, we always share this area map that shows our proposed trail system, the EV 5861, more or less alignment, but the connection of the Standback Forest, downtown Spencer, and the Yadkin River Trailhead out at the Yadkin River. And so the important thing to note is that this is part of a larger trail system. This is the house that we have historically known as the Carter House. It was purchased into a life estate by the Land Trust for Central North Carolina, which was reorganized as the Three Rivers Land Trust. The house was built and owned by Howard and Louise Carter, and it's about I think the main floor is about 1,700 square feet, brick ranch, located adjacent to Standback Educational Forest. The Carters extinguished or executed the life estate, and now the property has been deeded to the town of Spencer. This is just a rear view of the property. It shows the deck on the back. It's a sloping lot with a very well-maintained property with a big basement. There's also a storage shed on the property. And then this beautiful sloping lawn that slopes down to the Standback Forest, and the shelter and the pond area is just immediately behind that fence line. We have ideas about how this property might be developed. We created a site plan for the property, working with Pete Bogle, Pete Bogle's architecture firm, and Lynn Raker, who is a landscape architect. We were able to receive a grant from the Robertson Family Foundation to pay for this design work. And so this has been done at no cost to the town, but it's been useful in terms of inspiring people to think about the ideas for the future use of this property. Pete has developed a site plan that is a schematic plan for the building that is very ambitious. It includes all the drawing on the top and to the right, sort of in the pink color, the idea of a pavilion space on the right side of the building, and also the creation in the lower scheme of some walk-in restrooms in the area where the deck is located currently on the building. And then there is also these elevation drawings which shows improvements to the front, virtually to all sides of the building, that can be created or built in a phased plan that would ultimately provide access to all areas of the building, both floors, in the future. So that's the gist of my presentation. And at this point, I would call for, or ask the mayor to call for public input. But being that there's no one here necessarily to speak, I will mention that we met a week or so ago with members from the Rowan County Parks and Recreation staff and from the Horizons Unlimited staff that does environmental education for Salisbury, Rowan, and actually Davie County students as well. And they provided some input and gave their thoughts about the property. They're very supportive of the idea. The thing that emerged from that, more than anything else, was that the building the restaurants will improve the use of the property more than anything else. I know that we are looking to add staff, and we will be adding staff that will eventually be housed at this location. There will be room within the building that will be available for classes, meetings, crafts, environmental education. I don't know, is there a bridge club in Spencer? All those kinds of activities could be housed in the building. So there are a number of things that could be done with the property. And so, as I mentioned on Tuesday, and let me go back to the public input thing. Peter has made the suggestion for the Talk of the Town being there. We think on April 15th is the date. I think that's an excellent idea to invite people in to look at the property and provide input. Steve and I are actually going to present on the 9th to the Salisbury Greenway and Transportation Committee, I think what they're called. They meet at the Center for the Environment, so we're going to go and talk to them on the 9th, and then planning board on the 14th. So we're trying to talk to as many people about this as we possibly can. And so the idea with this public input, and hopefully the board will consider the resolution on Tuesday night. We would proceed with a Parks and Recreation Trust Fund grant application to at least begin part of this project. The due date is May 1st for the application. So I don't know if we need to say anything more than that, but unless we just want to say something more than that, we hit.
I think the one thing we can say is, as far as public input and comment, that those, if anybody's listening online tonight and has any feedback for us that they want to send in to Joe's attention, that would be helpful. Board, any questions?
Joe, is the house ADA now? I'm assuming it will be when we finished.
It will be when we finish. The thing that we have to provide is access to all areas. And so there's the main floor, which is the main living floor, and then the addition with the restroom will be on the back.
Right.
Those restrooms will be accessible from the exterior of the building via a properly designed paved surface. And the restrooms themselves will have the appropriate spacing and radii so that maneuverability within the space for wheelchairs and
handicap
various abilities. Then there will be a handicap parking in front of the house with a appropriately designed access through the front door.
Okay. And
then you can go through the back to what will be a outdoor classroom on top of the restroom. And so that's what we will provide for There may be other things that I'm missing that we do as we perhaps pursue a phase development of the property, but it will absolutely be ADA accessible when completed.
And if I remember, the plan was to remove some of the interior walls in that house and open up some larger spaces. Is that correct?
That is correct. The house was built with an engineered voice system that for both the ceiling and the floor, which means that none of the interior walls are load bearing, and so they can be adjusted in any way that we need to, or removed for that matter. Okay. And so it's one of the great benefits of that structure, and we are deeply indebted to the genius of Howard Carter for building the house that way. Yeah. And so it's going to be a tremendous asset for the community.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, board, next item is to consider approving an art concept for storefront window graphics. Mr. Francis?
Thank you. One thing, and Joe, maybe we'll talk about this once we get into the agenda review, but I think we were going to talk a little bit about the potential appointment of board members and such, but we'll come back to that. Okay, so what you have before you and on the screen here is a concept of artwork that would be installed as perforated vinyl to do a few things. One, obscure the unused spaces, storefront spaces we have, and kind of liven up, connect in with the park, tell some history, and also advertise that there's space available in a few of these, and so that's what I'd like to do is talk through the concept with you and see if we could move forward with this project. The goal is to cover the glass on these 4 sections that go starting at our first larger lease space that has 2 large sections, and then the next 2 sections are smaller, and they are the 2 smaller lease spaces. And the vision is that the first 2 sections that I think make up 13 of the 19 sections or so would be more of a permanent type installation, because that the largest space next to us is the town's room to grow, and even if we grew into that space, we likely would maintain this as our entrance to the building, and it would be an interior circulation kind of thing. The other 2 smaller spaces, hopefully something will be in them someday, and this has been designed in a way that if that piece of it changed or went away from the overall, it still kind of leaves a coherent story without those final pieces, but they're all kind of complementary of each other. We did a RFP process to identify vendors to work with on this project, and we've been working with Duncan Parnell out of Charlotte. They're the same group that did a lot of the artwork installation in this building, and they also assisted us with the installation of one of our mural projects. And we have available funding within the current year budget for the project. It's about $2,250 for design and $4,404 for production and installation. So in terms of the art, I'll talk through these and certainly start with a big thank you to the folks at the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources. I reached out to Kelly Alexander at the Transportation Museum, and she immediately connected me with Larry Neal. Larry has been a staff member of that department for many years. He spent some time here at the Transportation Museum, but he spent other time in his career elsewhere, including at Reed Gold Mine in Cabarrus County, where he was prior to being here, and then where he returned to. But he was the author of a pictorial history book on the Spencer shops, and he provided every bit of his books, images, and text to us for our use for this project. And so we certainly appreciate the collaboration to make this possible. There are a lot of images in here that people may be familiar with, but we were able to get the kind of original quality images to be able to put this together. And so the first set of panels here talks about really the story about the Southern Railway and Samuel Spencer and Robert Partee and his family and the Henderson acquisition and that sort of thing. And it also has some images of around the history of the YMCA in town. The second window here had the two images there. The one at the top is the construction of the back shop, which is kind of interesting that you could look at that and see a building under construction 120 years ago and turn around and see that enormous building is certainly still there. The picture below it was the location of the first YMCA in town. It was a rented space. And then if you go over to the last panel on the right, of course, the grand Victorian style building that was the YMCA in town is pictured there. The other thing that's shown on the doors, that is a view of Salisbury Avenue looking north towards Spencer, and you can see the trolley track in place. And then I think what I tried to provide with you there is the overview, and then you also have pages that have each panel and the captions kind of blown up next to it, so you can kind of see. But the wording is the wording that in general came from the book. So Mike, we can go ahead to the next set of windows. So this one shows some familiar scenes. We have at the beginning there, we have the building that we now know as our library, but we also have the building next to it that is not there. And I guess I should back up on the panel before it. I'll hold this paper up. The panel before it, the last photo you see on the bottom there, it was the original schoolhouse building that was in the location of our current library building. So that one came first, and then the brick building, and then our current building. I believe it was, I think the date was 1926 is when that building came about. And we also have a view on Carolina Avenue that might be familiar with the house there in the corner. The next set of images has, starts to have some good relevance with our park project, because it has the corner here with what was the Wachovia Bank building there at the corner of 5th and Salisbury Avenue. It's no longer there, but it's neat to be able to show that. But the picture below that is one view of the park. It shows the features like the columns and the arch entryway, and then the large image next to it is a kind of a bird's eye view that shows a variety of elements that will look familiar and look different at the same time. Any questions about that grouping? Okay, we can go ahead, Mike, to the next one. So then the next one is our first, our next space that we would, this is the smallest lease space, and it has a space available sign on the door, but also some images of folks who worked at the shops, and one of the streamliner locomotives, I believe that was the Tennessean, that was captured in that picture. There was some neat photos of workers a variety of different folks. I'm assuming there's going to be people in here who are family members and relatives and ancestors of folks here in town, of course. But and then that picture on the right is a group of company firefighters who went to a state tournament, and they had a run of many years of being state championship in their hose reel competition. I'll read this because it's interesting, and maybe we need to recreate this competition in modern days. But it says the Southern Railway encouraged competition between the repair shops across the system. One sport was hose reel cart teams, which pulled the hose carts used for fire suppression. At the 1926 State Firemen's Tournament in Morehead City, the team from Spencer ran the 100-yard hose reel race in 17 3/5 seconds, breaking their own past record of 18 seconds flat. The team had to run 100 yards, unreel 98 feet of hose, attach hose to a hydrant, and run water. Spencer hose reel teams held the record from 1906 through the 1920s. Seems like a lot of effort. All right, and then if we go to the next, the last set, that is an image of showing another streamliner. That was a photo from 1941 of the E6 2801 pulling the new passenger streamliner known as the Southerner, and it was crossing northbound at the Yadkin River, and the railroad had a pump station at the river, which is also seen in the picture there. So again, these ones certainly complement, but if things had to change and we needed to remove this part of it, the rest of the images would kind of still stand on their own. So given the scale of this and that it kind of has a feel of being like a mural, we wanted to have this in front of you for your approval before we proceeded any further.
Great, thanks. Board, any questions, comments?
I love it. I think it's like having a museum right here at the park. I think it's wonderful.
That's big outside the window.
Typically, they do it inside the windows. Yep. It'll be inside the windows. Yeah.
Will last longer if it was.
Yeah. Typically, they do it inside the windows, and then of course you can see out, but you cannot see.
Yeah. That's even better.
Yeah. And the upper part of it, you gonna leave the star flakes, or are you gonna leave it clear?
No, we'd like to clean those windows off. The start, we actually had all the glass cleaned at some point, and then Winterfest came around, and the snowflakes appeared. And
You know, I'm wondering if perhaps if Duncan Parnell can do something like that they can also perhaps get print snowflakes that are cleans that during the winter we can put up there.
Yeah.
perhaps,
Take
That'd be
down,
nice.
right?
perhaps.
You
know, they sell those at the dollar store.
Okay, well.
It may not be as
How
long.
about you,
Aaron is on,
engineer?
I'm saying.
On the hook.
Yeah, we'll let you do that part.
I'm on it.
What happens if, because obviously a good bit of that will be permanent or semi-permanent, but if, like we rent that, does it stay up? Does it come down? Because from using these, they're very temperamental. So it's not something you would want to take up and
Right.
I mean up and down. I mean, it's probably a one-off.
So I have a couple of thoughts on that. You know, one is tenants may want them to stay up. They may want to put their signage above and then on the doors. And like you said, they technically, like that one can come down. It's not necessarily integral to everything else. But the other thing to keep in mind too is one of the things we've been talking about is with this business incubator, of the start of that potentially being in one of these lease spaces. So if it's there, I think it makes a lot of sense to leave it there, right?
And another opportunity that we're trying to pursue related to that is, and we had a year ago pursued the Commerce grant, the Downtown Economic Development grant, hoping to get some funds for the upfit of those spaces. That was not fully funded per our request, but we're going to be trying again in another round of funding to go specifically for that part of the project again, and we'll do our best.
I have a question on these panels here on number 450. the pictures of the gentleman with all the information written there. How legible is that gonna be? Because, I mean, you're talking, that's up, what, 6 feet high? Are you gonna be able to read that?
Well, I talked with the designers about that, and they were, of course, it looks small. It's going to be quite large font. It may be like, if you see, I'm not exactly sure how to compare here behind you, but you can see that the lettering there where it says North Carolina, it may not be quite that big, but it's going to be that that part of the idea is when you're far away, you're not going to be reading it, but if
Right.
you're walking right there in front of it, you should be able to read it, even if it's up high a little bit.
But you're gonna have to step up into the planter box to get it high enough to read it, aren't you?
I read sometimes.
So there is not a planter box.
Well, I mean, that
In that
area
area.
that's, this is
Right.
planted,
there,
yeah.
right?
So if you go to try to read it, are you gonna step up into this? to try to-
Probably not, but the other suggestion I would have is, we're talking about doing like a mural tour,
Mhm.
and I think that could be something that this would be a part of, obviously.
Yeah.
Because
Absolutely.
somewhere on the building, we have a QR code
Right,
that it talks through each of these. Like,
Yeah.
you could start at one end and walk through, and
Yeah.
that way you can pull it up on the smartphone.
And to scale, it's almost the width of a door handle. I mean, that's gonna be like a 3/4 of an inch. It's gonna be pretty big.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see the door. I mean, it's like the capital lettering is almost as wide as the door handle. Or tall, anyway.
I think it'll be to the eye.
Other questions? It's definitely an improvement.
Amen. That's great.
well, it's gonna make a lot of people happy about not being able
Yeah.
to see that junk in
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And whether it's junk or not, it's debatable, but, yeah.
Stuff. They won't see in the storage. All right. Well, board, I think what Peter needs is a vote. He needs a motion and approval to move forward with this and approve the art concept and enter the contract with Duncan Burnell.
And just one more question. We can pay for this current budget. Is that what you said?
Yes, we actually have a PO set up with them.
Okay.
This is of an amount that the contract itself didn't need your approval, but yes, we have it within the budget.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. All right.
Now, there are additional pictures, colored pictures in our handout. Is that, what are those intended for?
I think they're just,
Is this for something else, these pictures?
I can't see what you have there. That may have been part of the proposal they originally sent with us. Those are not now relevant to this art concept. Those are, I think, could have been some images that they had included in this document.
I make a motion that we approve this work as far as that goes.
Motion by Mr. Miller, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Moody. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? All right, all opposed? That's approved unanimously. And what's the timeline? How quickly can they?
I think it's actually going to be measured in weeks, not months,
That's That's good.
from what I understand.
All right, very good. So we'll be able to have that up with an opening of a new town park, sounds
Yep.
like.
Oh, that'd be
That's great.
wonderful.
All right. All right, board, we'll move into review of our April 8th agenda for next week. We'll have an invocation. Do I have a volunteer to do that?
I'll do it.
All right, thank you, Ms. Sledge. We'll have the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we'll have an opportunity for additions or deletions and adoption of the agenda. I do know that there's a request tonight from staff to add 2 items to next week's agenda.
Actually, 3.
3, okay.
And I can briefly mention those if you like.
Yeah, go ahead and do that, and then we can figure out where we fit those in.
So the first one you have before you, because excuse me, I've inhaled my water, so I don't recommend doing that. Anna's on the ball and has provided this add-on agenda request related to the League of Municipalities voting delegate designation. And so that would be the one thing we would like to add to the agenda for Tuesday.
Okay.
Another would be
One option would be that we decide that tonight and go ahead and put it on the consent agenda.
that's true. Yeah.
Who do we know that is going to City Vision? You're going?
Sure.
Okay, very good. I'll be there, but only for a period of time, I think, for our presentation. So
The voting won't happen there, the voting is ahead of time
it's
electronically.
going to happen electronically. Okay.
But they'll be announcing at the City
I
Vision
got
who.
Okay, all right.
I missed the deadline. Decided at the last minute.
Okay.
Deadline.
All right, so it'll be electronic voting. All right. Well, board, is there a preference? Who do you want to delegate to do that?
Why don't we delegate the person who's going to be at City Vision
Hey, great.
to represent us?
For the full time.
How about that, Mr. Muhammad? Would
All right,
you accept
everybody
that
in
challenge?
agreement with that?
Yes.
Okay. So
Good
what
man.
we'll do is we'll put that on the consent agenda item then to authorize Mr. Muhammad to be our voting delegate.
Okay. And then and just late breaking, it may actually be a fourth item we'd like to do, but this is going to be two similar things. So Joe's been working on identifying some folks interested in our Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, and we do not yet have the sufficient number of applications back in to appoint the full slate of 5. We have a few, but we are on good authority that we may before Tuesday have enough, and so more than enough. So it may be that's something. If we can consider that on Tuesday, that would help with the process of applying for the part of the grant and due May 1st.
Very, very quickly, we've had a recent uptick in interest in applications for the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, and I'm anticipating a number of them to be in my hands tomorrow. And so we will, working through the town clerk, get those to you in advance, so we're not putting them in front of you on Tuesday night, but I anticipate we will have at least 6. We have 5 positions on the board, and we have some really good applicants. But it just emerged as of this afternoon, even.
So you think you're going to have 6 applications, and we'll have 5
Yes.
slots. So we're going to have to be the guys who decide.
It's hard. It was,
To whom much is given, much is expected.
That's true. Okay. And you said you'd get those to us prior to the Tuesday meeting?
I will do my dead level best to have that. I've been promised that they will be available.
So we have a minute to think about it. Okay.
Okay, so board, that being the case, do you want to add that? I would suggest adding it right around item 8, either before or right after, since that's when we'll be talking about the Parks and Recreation Trust Fund grant.
I would add it ahead of the resolution.
Okay, so we'll make that item 8 and then push everything beyond that. Does that work?
Yep.
Okay, very good. All right, third item.
This is like 2B or 3, whatever you want to name it. But our fire department, just like all others, has a firefighters relief fund, and that involves appointments. And it's something that's kind of handled internally to the fire department, but there is supposed to be representation. That is an appointment by the governing body, and I think typically that would involve somebody on the governing body. So we would like to discuss that on a little more on Tuesday. We can get some more information together about that. I believe Sam Morgan has been on that, and I think I don't know how long he has been the representative in that capacity, but it's supposed to be. I'm looking at something from the state's website, and it appears that there would be 2 positions elected by the fire department, two appointed by It says city or county commissioners and one position appointed by the insurance commissioner. So we could talk about that more in detail, but that's the other item that we'd like to talk about on Tuesday to add on.
All right, board, I'd suggest we have that right before departmental reports.
Joe has a question.
Does it relate to the fire department? All right, well, hang on just a minute then.
He may have that place for that one person that we're gonna.
Well, all right, so item 14 is departmental reports. Do you want to add the fire department right before that? Does that work? Sure. Okay, all right, so that'll become, well, Anna, whatever number that becomes. I think it becomes 14 maybe, or 15. It becomes 15.
Our very early agenda deadline this month has come to roost.
All right, Joe, what's item 4?
It's the sequencing that has driven, in addition to the early deadline, of being authorized to apply for this grant, for the part of grant, and then having to consolidate all of the documents that help you score in the application. And one of them is something that this board actually did in 2023, which was to update the Parks and Recreation Capital Improvement Plan. Y'all did that last April as well. And so relevant to this project, we have some news that I won't announce tonight, but it has to do with matching funds. And I probably will defer to the mayor on Tuesday to talk about this more, but if we could briefly consider updating the CIP to reflect matching funds for the Forest Center. And I apologize for, last minute, but I was having a conversation this afternoon with Trey Pouchet, who is our regional recreation specialist, and he just laughed. He said, I don't know how you guys do it, but we turn things around quickly, and that's the beauty of being in a small town where you can be agile and get a few important people to make decisions quickly. And so Tuesday night, or prior to Tuesday, we'll have something to you that reflects a modification to our recreation capital improvement plan. And so I'll just.
Do we need an executive session tonight?
I don't think we do.
Do we need an executive session tonight?
I don't know that we would have anything in that regard.
But what I would suggest, though, is we do the advisory board right after our consent agenda. Then we do the capital improvement plan update. And then we do the adoption of the application.
Yeah.
And this is, the mayor lived it with us yesterday, but it happened really quickly.
It's exciting.
Right.
But it did happen quickly.
Just want to get our ducks in a row.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
So
All right.
the resolution becomes number 10 then.
Correct. Okay. Any other additions?
One more, and this is it. We're cutting it off.
So it's 5 now.
Mine would
Okay.
be Joe's
It'll be all right.
surprise.
I thought it was going to be
2.
I thought it was going to be 2. 2 turned into 5 somehow.
Okay.
So and this one is to approve an audit contract for the upcoming fiscal year. We have had an RFP process, and we do have a recommendation now that we've come to in the last day or so that we would like to add to Tuesday's agenda.
Okay. Yeah. All right. And where do we want to add that? Any suggestions?
I want to do it in front of the fire committee.
Okay. So we'll do that.
Yeah.
That works.
Just before the departmental.
Sounds good. Okay. All right. So now, board, we've got items 8, 9, and 10 that we talked about. And then, so after supporting the application for a Parks and Recreation Trust Fund grant, we'll have a resolution to direct the clerk to investigate an annexation petition. We'll get a presentation from Mr. Blunt on that item. We will then have the town clerk, because she's so good, to have already done that certificate of sufficiency for petition to annex the property. So we'll get a report on both of those. And then we will then have a resolution to set a public hearing date for that proposed annexation. So those will be 3 items. After that, then we will have an item that's considering the town manager to negotiate and execute a economic development micro grant agreement with the North Carolina Railroad Company. It would be with them, and a subrecipient agreement with Samet Corporation, who is the developer that is working to redevelop the old finishing company site, as well as the what has been known as the Fisher Lamb site. And then finally, the last item before we have the 2 add-ons was to consider awarding a historic preservation incentive grant here in town. And I assume Kyle will be here. We'll get an update from him on that. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Very good. Board, any questions on those items? All right. Well, then we'll have our departmental reports. Anything for departmental reports in particular that the board would like to make staff aware of tonight so they can be prepared for their updates on Tuesday?
I did have one question, and it wasn't about the departmental reports, though. I think it was about the budget amendment for the abatement of the Old Town Hall. We have a purchase order, but it was never processed. Is that what I'm reading?
So we discovered that we last fiscal year we had gone into the process of contracting and attempting to get a purchase order set up, and that didn't happen correctly. So the funds did not roll over; they went back into the fund balance, and so we're trying to recapture the funds that we were attempting to encumber at the end of the last fiscal year.
So we're going to move forward with issuing that to the company that is going to do the abatement. Is that correct?
That's what we're requesting.
Okay, and is the amount of money still going to be the same?
Yes.
Okay.
So the contract's not going to increase any.
No, and we actually had originally set out with a contract that was going to go through, it was either October or November, and we extended it to June because our timetable needed to move, and the company told us they were still good. And we've been back in touch with them in the last several weeks because we were making progress on getting the stuff out of the building and we've got dates. We'll talk about this more next week, but we've got dates identified for making surplus items available and such, and we intend that the contractor will be able to get to work in May.
All right.
So they're aware of that and ready to go.
Thank you.
Okay.
The note that I was just going to mention about departmental reports is Chief Vile is not going to be able to be here on Tuesday. Lieutenant Leonard is planning to be here in his absence, but he wanted to make sure y'all knew that and didn't have any questions for him while he was here tonight.
Is our officer okay who was involved in the accident?
He is he's okay in the sense that he walked in the other day, and it was amazing to see him walking around. He has some injuries he's got to work through, and but generally he's very blessed to be generally okay, and nothing significant that we know of at this time.
That vehicle didn't look so good.
Not the vehicle.
All right. And then we'll have our town manager report, and then Peter, you have pre-recommendation budget workshop. I assume to work to set the date for that. Okay. Very good. And then we'll have requests, comments by the mayor and board, and then executive session if needed. Okay. Does that work? All right. Is there a need to go into an executive session this evening for any reason? Okay. Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right. The motion to adjourn. Is there a second? Second. All right. Second by Mr. Muhammad. Motion from Mayor Pro Tem. All in favor? All right. All opposed? We stand adjourned. Thank you all.
Okay.